The point I'm making is the difference between transformation and learning to cope with the past is vast. And I was talking about how we as human beings have developed and survived in nature and grew to be the dominant species on the planet because we have this ability to remember negative or painful experiences, compare them to what's happening, project by imagination and visualization into the future, compare these images, and either avoid danger or predict danger or actually figure out what some other animal or creature is going to do, and therefore, if we were the predator, capture or kill them so that we could eat them, okay, rather than being eaten. So it's a good thing that we have this ability. However, it's very, very primitive. It's been around since before we had vocal cords for speaking, since before we had language. Language, as far as we can tell, has only been around for about 40,000 years that we can have any evidence that people were actually talking in language. You know, before that, we don't have any evidence that people even spoke. You know, so they communicated through their eyes, through their body gestures, through their movements, through tonality. So they were able. We've been able to communicate for a long time in just those ways. But how we conduct our relationships, how we conduct our businesses, how we marry, have sex, relate to our children is based on this ancient model that's designed simply to have us survive. Now, there's survival as an individual. You know, on a very individual level, we only care about, I need to get some food for myself right now so I stay alive. Some food and some shelter or whatever it is that you need physically to physically stay alive as a biological being. And that's one very, very gross level of survival. And to tell you the truth, you, if you're watching this broadcast, probably don't know anyone except tiny infants. We're all like that when we're infants. We don't care about anybody else. We only care about getting food. And when we display those little flirtatious, giggly, cute things that babies do, it is to get food and be loved and protected and survive. Okay, in a world which is clearly controlled by a much bigger people. So you probably don't know anybody that's on survival level 1. You know, even people that are living in the street aren't necessarily on that survival level. They can be very entrepreneurial and they can have relationships. Survival level 2 would be simply, I take care of you because by doing so, it helps me stay alive. So there's relationship based on, I have to keep you around and keep you alive and happy, and I have to make sure you don't kill me. And I don't kill you so that we can stay alive. And because we are together, we're alive better. And then the next level up it would be tribe. And in the tribal level of consciousness, and the tribal level of humanity, in which most third world countries find themselves, and most countries are still in a tribal culture. And I'll describe a tribal culture for you. In a tribal culture, the order of the day, how we survive is we make sure that our tribe survives. Our tribe, our family, our culture. We make sure that it survives, and that's our main concern. And how we know what is right and wrong is not because we look inside and we decide for ourselves. No, 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 no. In a tribal culture, the tribal leader tells us what's right and wrong. And because the tribal leader says it's good or it's bad or it's right or it's wrong, that's how we know what's right or wrong or good or bad. And everybody follows that. And you could be prosecuted, persecuted, killed, cast out, any number of things. Bad things can happen to you if you don't follow the tribal leader and the tribal order. Now I'm saying this for your benefit because most of the technology that you've heard, most of the healing technology, most of the psychological technology, most of the philosophies and religions that you've ever heard in your life, for most of us. I'm speaking to a very intelligent crowd, so many of you are very educated and have heard a lot more. But I'm talking about how most of it comes down is that it is coming from a tribal mentality. Like, let's keep our people, let's cause the survival of our family, our people, our unit, our culture. And everyone that's outside of that, well, we don't care about them too much. We have to deal with them, but we don't really care about them or their survival, because they could become our enemy in a second. In fact, we kind of consider them enemies because they're not us. So, given that type of thinking, there is very little inside of that that would engender or would encourage you to think for yourself, to listen to your own heart, to go inside and listen to your own truth and make your own choices and decisions based on what that voice you hear inside yourself. In fact, in many cultures, if you hear voices speaking to you inside, they'll lock you away. You know, they'll have a good case for you're insane, right? And so you have to be very careful in that type of a culture and that kind of an atmosphere when you say that my inner voice tells me this, you know, or I'm listening to my heart and my heart says that what the tribal leader is telling me is not true. It's not the right way or the good way. Then you could be in big trouble. And as you know, a lot of people are in big trouble for opposing certain tribal leaders. And for that reason, Embrace Growth exists. And my wife and I do the work that we do as a direct confrontation, really, to that type of thinking, as a direct confrontation, not to destroy that thinking, but to enhance that thinking, to cause a transformation where that type of thinking can move to the next level. And there are next levels. There's 8, 10, 12 levels of evolution of thought and values that I'll share with you on another show. Perhaps I'll do a whole show on just the values level. I have in the past, but I could do another show on just the values levels. But I will go so far as to say there is a fourth level, and that is the level at which, you know, you as the Iranian culture have found yourself at this crossroads, and that is where you say, I'm tired of being told what is right and wrong by the tribal leader. I'm tired of it. I don't believe it's right. I can see for myself my own inner truth, my own sense of value, my own connection with God, with Spirit, with what is right and wrong, tells me that this is not right, that this is wrong. And I don't want to stand around and have my life taken over by a tribe or a tribal leader that I no longer share their values. Now, for those of you who share those values, you're welcome to have them. But there are some who have stood up and have said, I no longer value this. This is not my value. This is not what I understand or believe or feel inside. And that is a fourth level of values in which there are the youth of a culture, the youth of a tribe, which stands up and says, I will no longer follow these rules. I will make my own rules. Now, this level also has its limitations, which is more than we'll go into today, okay? This level also has its limitations, and its limitations begin with now the people that are on, let's call it level 4, they get together and they say, we only value people who value level 4 thinking. In other words, the only people that we really care about are the people that think like us. So they cut themselves off from other ways of thinking, and they become the future tribal leaders, you see. They become the future tribal leaders. So they start their own little revolution or big revolution in some cases. They start their own revolution, and then anybody that's not in their revolution is against them, and they're not thinking correctly. So if they're not supporting us, then they're against us. And that is a type of thinking that is necessary in order to separate yourself from the old way of thinking. However, it is not something that will last throughout time. There will be a new way of thinking that will arise, a level 5 way of thinking that will always arise within that and move on to a newer stage. We'll cover that in another show. I just wanted to begin the show by talking about these values, because the work that we do at Embrace Growth is specifically to address the limited thinking that you and I have inherited. You know, I grew up in a tribe as well, and most of us have grown up inside of some kind of a culture or a family or a religious belief in which those people that raised us believed that their way was the right way and the only way, and that every other way was wrong. And many of us, and I believe that if you're watching this show, probably you've begun to think differently now. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this channel, this show, and you certainly wouldn't be watching me, an English show on a Farsi channel, which is definitely outside of most people's thinking, yes? So I'm going to assert, and my evidence for my assertion is that you're watching and listening. If you're watching or listening to this show, you've begun to think for yourself, and you've begun to question some things, and so I congratulate you for that, and that's great. The next thing for you is to begin to take your thinking and to stand for it, to be responsible for it, to actually claim your own thinking and your own heartfelt feelings and inner knowledge. You see, there's thinking and then there's having thoughts. There's a distinction between thinking your own true original thoughts, really thinking, which is a lot of hard work, or regurgitating somebody else's thoughts that you've heard or read or been told or picked up somewhere along the way. That's not really thinking, that's having thoughts. And most education is about having thoughts or learning other people's thoughts. Very little of our education is about tuning you in to your own original heartfelt thoughts. And that's what we do at Embrace Growth, and that's what I wanted to tell you about. And that's what you can count on from me. Now I'm going to go ahead and take some calls.